But when it comes to the race, as we've discussed here on this show, it'll likely come down to voter turnout. And that includes bringing new voters out this time around. Joining us now to explain how he plans to do that is Scott Presler, a conservative activist who organized nationwide cleanup efforts and now has a new campaign. So, Scott, last time I talked to you, we were talking about how you go from city to city, you organize these cleanup efforts to clean up the streets, get rid of trash, and really the good work that you've done there. But now you're back with a new campaign that you're looking to execute. Can you explain what that is?
Absolutely. Well, Alex, thank you so much for having me. Yes, I'm a private citizen that not only goes around picking up trash, but now I'm also registering new voters. You see, the most revolutionary, powerful thing that you can do is to register to vote and to make a plan to vote. So I'm not only coupling my cleanup efforts with registering voters, but I'm looking to actually expand my efforts and go into prisons.
And that's an extraordinary thing, too, because we always talk about how this country just doesn't vote. I mean, every election cycle, we talk about almost how half the country isn't showing up to pick who's leading that country. And you point something out there, too, and it's the idea that you're not only reaching out to communities who may be misrepresented. I mean, oftentimes the communities that you're cleaning up don't have proper representation in our government, but now you are taking that a step further. You're going to jails and prison systems and registering those individuals to vote as well. So what does that look like? Is there any assistance you need in doing so?
Absolutely. Well, I just posted on Twitter very simply, hey, I would like to give our prison population a second chance. I'm inspired by President Trump and the legislation that he has signed with the First Step Act. And as a Republican, I want to champion giving society a second chance, giving our prison population a second chance. I've already spoken to a correctional officer in Pennsylvania, and I've already spoken to a contact in Tennessee who's reaching out to her sheriff. So my call to action today is if there are any COs out there, any wardens, any sheriffs, I would love the opportunity to visit your prisons and to help register your misdemeanants to vote. You see, a lot of people, they misconstrue that if somebody's committed a felony, yes, they cannot vote, but there are a lot of people in prison for non-violent offenses who have committed misdemeanors, and they can absolutely register to vote and vote this November.
And it doesn't only seem like something that is good on more of a moral or ethical level, but it's also a pretty smart strategy. I mean, you bring up the idea of the First Step Act. I mean, that's something where the White House was probably the most pivotal difference-making type of piece of legislation when it comes to criminal justice reform for the better part of several decades. So there is an argument to be made there of going to these people who are in prison and trying to get them out to vote and making the argument there as opposed to letting someone else control the narrative. And I think that is something when we're talking about voter registration, I often see liberal groups kind of organizing that effort. It's very rare where I see conservatives doing what you're doing, going out there and controlling the narrative, registering people who want to get active in our political system. I mean, that's a beautiful thing right there. Should our Republican leadership be making more of an overt effort in order to do that?
Absolutely. Well, I want to make it clear, I am a different kind of Republican. I'm not afraid to go anywhere and talk to anyone. I've been to San Francisco. I've been to the streets of West Baltimore. It's time that Republicans go into high schools, into colleges, into nursing homes, into prisons, into the homeless communities. We should go everywhere. And as the Republican Party, we should champion voter rights and champion getting people registered to vote. And that is what I hope to bring to the Republican Party. You see, I always say, this is a movement based on love, and this is a no judgment movement. And so therefore, if I preach it, then I have to act it. I have to be a leader and an example. And that is why I'm doing the work that I'm doing. I want the Republican Party to champion voter rights.
I mean, that's very well said. And we've talked to young people on this show before. We've talked to people in minority communities before, and they say that very same thing. They say that the Democratic big tent, as it used to be called, is now starting to become a little bit more tighter, where if you don't agree with certain issues, if you don't agree with certain things, you're not welcome in the party anymore. I mean, we saw that with abortion, for example. You used to be able to be a Democratic pro-life individual. Nowadays, you're not allowed to be. You're purged from the platform. They don't want you. So I think that Republicans do need to capitalize on that. Start speaking to young people who may feel disenfranchised, minority voters who don't necessarily agree with these small businesses being rioted and looted in the inner cities. There are are opportunities there. I think you're exactly right. So when you go across the country and you talk to these different people in San Francisco, in Baltimore, are they looking for a change in politics?
Well, I want to use West Baltimore as an example. That's where I got my start. That's where the cleanup efforts really began. And I recently visited Baltimore a 5th time to teach a voter registration training. And a woman came, happens to be a black woman, and she said she voted for Gore. She voted for Kerry. She voted for President Obama twice. She voted for Hillary Clinton. And now this November in 2020, she is voting for President Donald Trump. And I think it's because of this big tent that we've created. I think it's because people are opening their eyes and they're seeing what has voting Democrat gotten people. Look at the status of our cities and look at the cancel culture that is now surrounding society. So I want people to hear me loud and clear. I don't care if you are watching this program at home and you are also a long-haired gay American. You have a place within the Republican Party and you will be embraced and you will be accepted, and we proudly welcome you into our family going into this November.
And you know, Scott, I've been following what you do all across the country. I've been following you on social media. I urge all of our viewers to as well. You have some very good feel-good stories out there. I've seen you reach across the aisle. Yes. Bring people in too. And I mean, that's something that I think we need to start acknowledging, that if you want more people to vote for your party, you need to reach out to people who aren't voting for them to begin with. I think that's an understanding. It's a very simple one, but I think it's one that we've lost sight of as of recently in our political environment. But Scott Presler, it's always a pleasure having you on. Thank you for all the things that you're doing for this country, and thanks for coming on and explaining your new campaign.